Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cash Up, a weekly show where we converse with amazing folks in DFIR. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by Shelly Giesbrecht, also known as Nerdiosity. Shelly's currently a manager with CrowdStrike. Prior to her work at CrowdStrike, she spent her career in digital forensics, incident response, and information security, spanning all the way back to 2002. Having worked for both consultancies as well as in-house security, spanning technology, aviation, energy, and more. She holds 7 GIAC certifications, including the GIAC Security Essentials GSEC, GIAC Reverse Engineering Malware GREM, the GIAC Certified Intrusion Analyst GCIA, the GIAC Certified Incident Handler GCIAH, in addition to the GIAC Certified Forensics Examiner GCFE and the GCIA Certified Forensic Analyst GCFA. Shelly is currently pursuing her Master's of Science in Information Security Engineering from the SANS Technology Institute. She also holds 2 separate Bachelor's of Science degrees, one in biology and one in information technology. Shelly may be known for her bow ties and her blog Nerdiosity, but she is better known for her presentations and papers. She's spoken at multiple SANS Digital Forensics Summits, the Magnet Virtual Summit, the Talos Threat Research Summit, B-Sides Vancouver, a guest on a forensic lunch, and much, much more. Her papers are available in the SANS Reading Room and on the Cisco blog. She also built DNS Splice to parse DNS logs. Upcoming events to see Shelly include the Netintelligence Cyber Risk Summit at the end of the month, B-Sides Calgary in November, and We Hack Purple podcast on December 10th. Shelly is an absolute marvel and no doubt the best partner you could ever have to belt out show tunes. I must say we can do one heck of a Suddenly Seymour together. And with that, Shelly. Hey, Shelly.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, super happy to have you here. Thank you for everything you do to share all your knowledge and to really lead in this industry and getting to this point where you've become a leader in digital forensics and incident response. What was your journey to get here?
First of all, you're making me blush, so thank you. I think what's interesting about being a DFIR is there's so many different paths to get to where we are. Being Canadian, so cards on the table, I'm Canadian, still live in Canada, I think there are so many people that I have colleagues in the U.S. Came out of law enforcement or military, and in Canada, I think we have less paths like that, and so I find a lot of the folks that come out of DFIR in Canada are a little bit more organic in the growth of how we got there. And for me, I often tell people that. The job that I have now, I didn't even know existed when I was thinking about what do I want to be when I grow up.
I don't think anyone in our generation has that, right? Like digital forensics wasn't a thing when
the
90s, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I love to solve puzzles and I love to build Lego. So those are 2 things that I love to do. And so I got my first computer when I was probably 8 or 9. It was an Apple II compatible, not even the real thing, but a compatible. And a lot of people started playing games and whatnot. And I like to know how things work. I take things apart, which was the bane of my parents' existence because I would take everything apart and not know how to put it back together. And so with my first computer, what I did was, how did the programs work? And so I went into the back and looked at the code and then started writing small games of my own, not because I was interested in playing the games necessarily, but because I wanted to see what I could make work. And that was my first experience with computers. But I think by the time I was 13-ish and I went into the 8th grade, which is started junior high, really, where I was living. And I had my first computers class. So it was the first time I'd seen a computer in a school. But really what it was glorified typing class. They wanted to teach us how to type, but it was on computers.
Keyboarding.
Yeah, keyboarding. So the first day of class, and the teacher said, I want you to fill the screen with typing. So you hear all these kids and they're madly typing away, trying to fill this screen. And my first thought was, I'll write a program. So I wrote a 3-line program to write a line, print it, and go back to the beginning and write it again.
Loop, yeah.
So in about 20 seconds, I was done, and I raised my hand, and the teacher came over, and his reaction was not, "That's amazing," which is kind of what I was hoping for, but that's amazing, not what I
Shelly. I'm going to give you that's amazing that 13-year-old you deserve to hear, because your way that your brain works to go, what is the most efficient way to solve this problem with the skills I have, and to do that for a 13-year-old, that's amazing. So I'm speaking to 13-year-old you now, but that's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's very validating, honestly. But I often tell people that I feel like that was a moment where I fell out of love with computers for a while.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, honestly. And I think, I think that it was one of those things where, and I speak from my own experience, but when we don't get the validation as young people for the initiative that we've taken and whatnot, that it tends to turn us away from some of those things. And I don't think I found computers again until really I was almost graduating from my first degree, which is in biology. So I was considering going to medical school. I was considering going to vet school. I was considering, but I decided I was tired of standing in streams and taking samples. So I didn't know what I was going to do. And a friend of mine said, who was working at the time for Compaq, which was bought shortly after by HP. He was working in their professional services division, doing networking. And he said, "You should put in a resume here. They'll hire anybody." And it turns out they did. So newly minted graduate of biology, I decided I wanted to bolster my resume though before I applied. So I bought the book for NT4, the MCP book for NT4. Yeah, so I'm dating myself a whole lot. So I read the book and I went and I took the MCP exam and I passed it. I had never seen the operating system. I just read the book.
Oh, which wow!
It's debatable on the value of those certifications.
Yeah, I mean that's a very big. I mean, as outside of your origin story here, there is a big contention and input there about tests that have no practical nature that you just can study from a book for and pass if that is your aptitude, because different people have different aptitudes, but Absolutely. It is also possible if somebody has the aptitude and knew the operating system would have trouble with that test because it was testing book knowledge and not practical application.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that just kind of started it. I started working help desk for them and really found a real passion for working with computers. And from HP, I went to WestJet Airlines, which and started working help desk for them, but eventually made my way to the security team. And in that time, they actually helped me finish my second bachelor degree, which is in IT. So thank you, WestJet, for that, by the way. And found my way to the security team and have been in security operations and then incident response, obviously, ever since. I think a big turning point for me was 2012. I went to my very first on-site SANS DFIR. And I was a facilitator for Rob Lee for Forensics for 508.
Wow.
Some really amazing people that year. They were testing new content that year. So there was folks in my class that are, just absolute legends, but one of them being Sarah Edwards was on my team, author of the Mac Forensics class and world famous Mac Forensicator. Absolutely. A number of other folks that really influenced me to take that next step. And that was moving from being in industry and doing security operations and wearing many hats in security, really, into being much more focused into digital forensics incident response. So I moved from there into consulting, and I worked for Deloitte for a while, and then moved to Cisco. And I spent almost 4 years at Cisco, 3.5 years at Cisco, helping build out and manage their incident response, customer-facing incident response practice, as opposed to their internal team. Of the work that we did there. And then I got the opportunity to move to CrowdStrike just over a year ago. And it's been also just an amazing time and a really great place to be. So, I've been around a while.
What I love about your journey is that every step was building, right? So when you finished your degree, when you started at the help desk, and the help desk got you to the SOC, and the SOC got you to the IR team. And that is a really natural progression, especially on the corporate side. And I think it's an important path for people to remember, because some people are dismissive of that path. They want to head straight into incident response. And if you're fortunate enough to go that way, that is awesome. But it is also a completely legitimate path to start in IT. But to be honest, let's be 100% honest. In 2002, there probably weren't dedicated incident response teams at all corporations the way they are now at all major organizations or even in consultancy, because the security posture that would have fallen more into the regular security department at that time. So just a really great depth and breadth that you have. Do you still hone in on a lot of those skills from back when you were first learning and on the help desk? And how does that starting area that you started in, how does that really frame the leader and manager in incident response that you are today?
I think that's a great question. My very first job with Compaq was doing home internet support. So they were doing a contract for a large telecom, and we weren't allowed to let the customers of the telecom company know that we were in Canada. So it was for an international telecom company. One of the really fascinating parts about that job was, because you were dealing with home internet users, you weren't dealing with folks who had any level of technical skill.
Right.
And we were dealing with ADSL routers. So again, dating myself a little bit, but you had to be able to, understand the problem that they were having, and troubleshoot that, give them the direction that they needed to do this all over the phone. We weren't even able to remote it to anybody's PCs or anything like that. So I think, my start in IT was really about, one, the technical piece, which is being able to ask the right questions, which is huge in IR, right? Being able to understand and ask the right questions of people who do not necessarily always have a good understanding of what's in their environment, whether that be home users or corporate users. And also the second piece is people love their internet. So when their internet went down, whether it was a billing issue, which happened, or it was a technical issue, people get very upset. And I think that my first exposure to that was amazing, because I had to actually, deal with people who were having a bad day because they didn't have internet. And as incident responders, one of the things that we do is we help organizations on the worst business days of their lives. Right. When their business is down, when they're losing money, when they may have to lay off, and they're thinking about, if this doesn't stop, we may need to stop business. We may need to have to lay off, employees, etc. So they're having the worst business day of their lives. And I think my early experience really helps me, look full picture and understand that a lot of, and I was saying this to one of the younger consultants that I work with the other day, our job is to understand that when a customer is having that bad day, and sometimes they come at us with all sorts of the feels, right? Sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's panic. Our job is to kind of just absorb that and say, we're going to get you there, and here's how we're going to get you there, and come in with a plan. And I think as a manager, my job when I deal with customers is probably 80% of counselor, guider, and and friend, hopefully, and to get them to the place where they need to be, and maybe 20% technical. But the same thing, I think, with the folks that I now, lead and mentor, my job is to help them get to that point where they're able to do that as well. So I think that early experience really helped me get to that point.
I really love that, because sometimes people don't realize how their experiences in the trenches when they're first starting out, how those experiences shape and mold the type of leader they become years later. And I love the fact that there were both technical aspects of not only the tech that you had to understand then, which is obviously different than the tech now, but how to ask someone who is not as technically adept questions to get to the answers that you need and to be able to service and help them in a way that's comfortable for them. In addition to the most critical point, which is how do you approach people and elicit the information you need when they are in a state that is not maybe the best state for someone to be in when you're trying to elicit information. So that whole concept and technique and skill set is absolutely critical. And you only get that from having done work where you really have to have that nitty gritty daily repeated exposure to helping people on a bad day. And I just think that's brilliant.
I think honestly, it's the best part of my job is, that last piece where, customers often say to us, thank you so much, but we never want to see you again. And that's okay.
Absolutely.
But when they say it with a smile and that, when you're going out the door, a virtual door, that you got them to where they needed to be, that they, you've been that trusted advisor. That's the best for me.
So as we mentioned, you've got a lot going on coming up, a couple of conferences, etc. What kinds of things are you working on now? What are you sharing, if I can get a little sneak peek?
Yeah, absolutely. What do I have coming up? So first and foremost, I have Falcon is coming up. So it's our CrowdStrike customer conference. We're doing it virtually this year, similar to you folks did your Magnet User Summit, which was amazing, by the way. It was so much fun to be a part of.
And thank you for speaking at it. You were fantastic.
Well, I had a great partner in that. So Heather Smith. And so I'm going to be speaking at Falcon with my colleague, Jason Barnes. And we're going to be talking about mergers and acquisitions and the things that you should be thinking about as when you're engaging in mergers and acquisitions, so that you don't end up in an incident response position. So some of the cyber risk considerations that you take into account or should take into account when a customer is approaching M&A, or vice versa, you're being acquired. So we're going to be talking about that. That's really exciting.
I really love when incident responders take the lessons they've learned from incidents and apply it to proactive, preventative measures. Sometimes that's a step that's missed because we spend so much of our time trying to stop the bleeding and figure out what caused it. And I really love it when we take the extra step and say, how do we prevent it? So that's really great that you're taking that holistic approach and taking your skills back to the customers in that way, so that you don't have to help them on that worst day, or so that they're better prepared, maybe with better logging, maybe so that things could be identified and stopped quicker. And I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as I love to work with the customers and help them out in their time of crisis, we don't want them to have another incident. We don't want them to be in that situation again. So anything that we can do to, from, on the back end, giving them recommendations, or, from our strategic advisory practice of helping them out, mature that program. And absolutely that's sort of part of that. I'm also doing a webinar with Net Diligence. And that is focused on considerations for global breaches, so multinational global breaches, when a company has multiple locations. And I was lucky enough to be a part of that conversation, and it's a recorded webinar. I think it's going up on October 7th, I think. Mm-hmm. But I think we have a link somewhere. And we're going to be talking as a group. It's myself, the incident responder. We have folks from a lawyer, from insurance, and also from the credit industry.
That's great.
Industry to talk about all of those different pieces of what a global, what are some of the considerations that making for having an incident from a global perspective and jurisdictions and otherwise. It was quite an interesting conversation to be part of.
I really like that. It's so important. People sometimes don't realize the importance and differentiation in different nations when dealing with a multinational incident. I know last week, the HTCI New York, Singapore, and Hong Kong chapters did something similar, but specific to APAC. And it was really interesting. Warren Cruz actually moderated that. And I learned so much about the differences between China and Hong Kong and Taiwan. And you might think that they're the same in terms of data protection, but they're not. And it was really intriguing. So hearing this talk at an even larger global scale that you're doing, that seems really fascinating. And it's things we need to know if our organizations are multinational or if we're consulting in multinational analysis. That is fantastic. I love it. I love all these great things that you're speaking about that really show your vast experience in what you're doing. When you're
I'm just glad that people let me talk because I love to talk. So.
And some of us love to hear you talk because you really do share such great insights, such great tools. I mean, I've had the luxury of being at your talks before at the many SANS DFIR summits you've spoken at, and just hearing you talk about how you approach things like DNS logs, or your Magnet Virtual Summit talk where you were talking about the juggling circus of IR, or your talks are both, you span carrying the technical skills that are needed, but I've never seen you not reference the importance of how you educate the customer or learn the lessons from the customer or listen to the customer. And the fact that you always bring that element in with your technical guidance, I think is so imperative, and it adds a layer that's missing in a lot of the industry talks that are given. So thank you for bringing it in and reminding us about the importance of that at the same time that you're explaining DNS logs to us.
Thank you so much. I think, I am blessed to always have been backed up by some of the smartest people who work in DFIR. And I can honestly say that at CrowdStrike, I am spoiled for the brain trust that I get to take with me in my backpack, if you will, to every engagement. So I know what I have to say. I know what I'm good at, and I'm good at it. I'm really good at the customer stuff, and so I'm lucky, like I said, to be able to bring this whole host of folks with me that really are able to bring this technical expertise. As well as just a wealth of customer knowledge with them. And I learn every day from the folks that I work with. And I think that's a really important thing. And I loved, by the way, I was watching James Duffy's catch up the other day. I'm just such a big fan of his, just the amount of work that he puts out, but just at the age, I know. But I think it's so inherent to say that we have something to learn from everybody, no matter the level. So whether it's your customer and you learn something new, based on something that they're doing in their organization, but also the folks that I work with, right up from our interns. We have a fantastic intern program, and I learn something new from them every year. Right up to, my director team. There's always something interesting. One of my directors just gave me a book to read a few weeks ago that is just fantastic. And so I'm constantly taking stuff away from that as well. But everybody that we work with, whether it's technical or whether it's, a quote unquote soft skill, we're able to really, if you're listening, learn from folks and take everything in and hopefully be better than we were the day before. And you may have noticed with the amount of certifications that I have, I'm kind of a lifelong learner.
Absolutely.
But I like to take that into every aspect of what I do.
There's a couple of things that you said there. One, soft skills are hard. Let's just start there and acknowledge that. but you said something really important. You referenced the Cash Up episode with James Duffy, and I want to make it really clear that I'm having somebody on the episode today who has 18 years of experience in this field, but I also had somebody on who had 6 months experience in this field, because just like you said, it doesn't matter how long you've been here. We all learn from each other every day, and it really does take that whole team to come together. So I love your emphasis of that point. And, if Lee Whitfield soon opens up the Forensic Forecast nominations, I will tell you 100% for Newcomer of the Year. Both newcomers to the field I've had on the show so far, Elon Wright and James Duffy, you both get nominations from me. I'll tell you that outright right now.
Absolutely.
Just amazed by when people come into the field and just start sharing. That is such a brave thing to do, and I know it takes so much. So I just love when people who are new are doing it, as well as those of us who may have been around a little bit more, or people like you, a little bit longer. But speaking of resources and the book you received, what's your go-to resource? Doesn't need to be related to forensics.
So many things. I think from a career perspective, I think that's a big one. That's been a big one in the last couple of years for me. But when I was, for instance, deciding I was going to make the leap from Deloitte to Cisco, I was really nervous about the interview process, and so I reached out to a bunch of folks actually in the DFIR community. And I think, again, it's about that DFIR family and cultivating those relationships and continuing to keep those up as we move through time. But I reached out to a bunch of folks and I asked the question, if you were hiring a senior DFIR consultant, what were the questions that you asked? Because I wanted to be ready for this interview. I just wanted to just hit this interview really hard. And I was really lucky to get responses from everyone. And some of them were technical questions, and some of them were sort of soft skills questions, and some of them were what would you do if, or tell me about a situation when. But I was able to take all of those and practice all of those and research some of the answers that maybe I didn't know. And feel like when I went I may not have, had the answers to every single question, but I felt ready. I felt practiced. And that was a gift from all of these people that I've, developed these relationships with over the years. And so thank you to those folks. But I think, so from the perspective of just cultivating those relationships, I'm obviously pretty big on Twitter and mostly puppy pictures these days. But I think, I don't know, resources. I think anybody, I don't have necessarily anything in particular. I think anybody that I know, I try to gain that knowledge from again and go back to, whether it's my team or I'm constantly asking questions. I'm one of those people that will not sit, when somebody says to you, don't be afraid to ask questions, and they don't really think that you're going to, they're wrong. I always tell particularly the people that I work for, you will never wonder what I'm thinking about, because I will over communicate with you every single time. And for me, that's a huge key to understanding my world is asking questions. And I think, we manage 4 to 5 cases at a time, have to be very, very organized. So if I am not asking questions and constantly making sure that I understand what's going on, even if I'm not controlling pieces of it, which I'm terrible at, by the way, is I'm a little bit of a control freak. Then there's something wrong. If you haven't heard from me and I'm not asking questions, then there's definitely something wrong. So, but yeah, I think anything and everything, whether it's from food resources, again, DFR community. I'm going to go into the city. Where should I eat? Where should I drink? What should I do?
Absolutely.
Oh.
You brought up a couple of things there that are really important. Number one, I love the story you just told about as you were making that transition, and you were already well established, but that you reached out to your friends in the community and they gave you the questions. And from you doing that work and preparation, you gained the confidence necessary to walk in there feeling prepared. Even though you had no idea what was going to be asked, you felt prepared because you went through the exercise, but that you relied on others to help you design that exercise. And I really love that communication and how you related when you use that resource. I just think that's absolutely brilliant. I also cannot agree with you more about how the community can be so much more than a technical answer. Because sometimes we're traveling places, especially when I was a consultant, or even now with my work with Magnet, and I know you when you were a consultant in pre-COVID times, and when we return to travel again, where you may be going someplace that you really don't know, and sometimes just reaching out to somebody to make sure that the hotel that you're going to is navigable via mass transit or other means to where you're going, and knowing where maybe you can get food at different hours, especially if you're going to be on site and you're going to be working 12, 14-hour days, that that you can get food after. I've totally worked in places where everything's shut down at 8 p.m. and I left the customer site at 10, and I'm like, where do I go to eat? And you message people in the community and people will know answers. So it's kind of funny the things that you can get responses to as you build these relationships that are even more askew than you would think, but will help you in your work life, because it is important to eat after a 14-hour day of working on stuff.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And licorice and potato chips are not necessarily a good meal, although
what you can get at the 7-Eleven or the local convenience store is not necessarily the 24-hour convenience store. It's not necessarily the nourishment you need on an intense investigation with long hours. So,
yeah, and I would say that the convenience stores and my hotels that I stay in get more of my business than they should. But
absolutely, I am definitely one who's been there as well. So I'm going to ask you the question that everybody wants to know, everyone in the community, because you do have a certain knack and a certain trademark, if you will, which is your bow ties. Can you tell us a little bit about, you're wearing a really cool one today with skulls on it. Can you tell us a little bit about the bow ties?
Yeah. So it's actually kind of a boring story, really, the whole evolution of the bow tie, other than I made a move before starting as a consultant. I made a move from working for an airline where very casual, jeans, t-shirts, whatnot, my ubiquitous ball cap that I usually have on my head. And I was going downtown to work in oil and gas, and was a little bit more business casual, if you will. So I had to buy myself some dress pants and whatnot. And I've always been a big fan of bow ties. I've always been a big fan of ties. My mother has a picture of me at 6. I don't know if your mom did this, but like there's a picture of me and my sister at every age in an album, like next to each other. We're 3.5 years apart. It'll be the 1-year-old pictures, the 2-year-old pictures. Her 6-year-old picture is in a nice dress with a bow in her hair, and mine is in a checked shirt with a cowboy hat, 6 guns on my hips, and a bolo tie.
I love it. I love it. So the ties go back to the age of 6.
It is one of my favorite pictures. So
the
I
tie
decided I would.
And the programming, the computer like writing your own apps, they go back to the same age.
It's true. It's true. So I've always really liked bow ties, and I just thought that was, as I was sort of starting this new chapter in my life of going, having to drive into downtown and go to work, and having to sort of change what I was wearing, that from really casual to something a little bit more formal. That was kind of where I wanted to do and to build my brand. And I think that's a big piece. It's become very much part of my brand. And I think, as you know, because I think this is probably another question, is, as we move through our career, and we want to sort of make a name for ourselves, whether that's a name in your own company or whether that's, you and I who like to talk to people and be out in the community. Having a brand, having something that's recognizable about you, and something that you're known for, so that people do recognize you, is a big piece. And that's kind of become a little bit of the bow tie for me. People recognize the girl with the bow tie. I always say to people, I'm really sorry if I don't remember your name, but I meet a lot of people and I find people remember the girl with the bow tie, and I don't necessarily always. I'm terrible with names, so I always feel bad about that. But
that's okay. What I love about this is that you've decided that you were going to brand yourself and make a signature, and you're right. People remember you, and that's how people can string together the different work you did, and that they've seen you present, and they get that feeling of recognition when they see you. And it's really interesting how you can take something and bring it into your persona. And there's so many different ways you can do that helps you be memorable to others. And in being memorable to others, people will then again look at your work or recognize it. And it really does help even in the relationships, because you speak a lot about relationships with your customers. Your customers remember you, the people who you've helped remember you, and it gives them a soft place to remember you in addition to the work you've done. Because names can be hard, and different people have different affinities to how they remember people, and it's nice to be able to work on multiple levels so you can build those relationships with different people. So I love it. I mean, I think it's just so great, and it's a really good piece of advice for people who are looking for that thing for them. And for some people, it's something much simpler. I know people who always wear black. I know people who always, have a particular hairstyle, or there are people who have really funky, cool glasses, and different people have different ways of showing off their style.
Or amazing headscarves, just saying.
I do have a billion headscarves, but there's definitely different ways in which people can present themselves in a way that is still professional. And, I automatically pair you in my mind with Dr. Alex Nelson, who I don't believe the two of you have ever met. I've never seen you in the same space, but I do know you're two different people. But Dr. Alex Nelson also wears bow ties, and he works for NIST, and you'll see him if you go to DFRWS or AAFS, or if you're involved with the case community. But that affinity, it helps you be remarkable and rememberable, and so that people have something to associate. Association's so important, right? Like when we speak to people, we put things into terms where they can build associations and they remember them. It's the same thing with remembering a face. If you have something you can associate it with and associate the talk with, it helps remember. So it makes you more rememberable. And that's just really important in building relationships. And like you said, your brand. So I love the fact that you do that. And by the way, not a boring story at all. And I love the fact that, I mean, just the synergy between who you were at 6 before this field existed, and at 6 and 8, you're already showing these things that show the person you became as an adult. And I just think that's incredible. It makes me try to think about what things have I missed in my children already that are those things that are going to predetermine or that will make sense to who they become in fields that don't yet exist. So it's just really cool.
It's true. My favorite customer story, though, honestly, with the bow tie is I showed up to do a tabletop exercise with a customer in Florida. And showed up, and I always wear a bow tie when I go particularly on site with customers. And I showed up, and the entire customer team, they'd ordered a box of bow ties for their entire team, men and women, and showed up. And they were all wearing bow ties when I arrived on site, which is so amazing. It was like the best thing ever.
That is awesome.
It was so lovely.
What a beautiful show. What a beautiful show of appreciation. That's awesome.
It was so neat. I never met any of them before. They looked me up online, and they showed up, and it was this thing, and it was just, it was so much fun.
I have to make a call out to James Duffy in the chat, who, by the way, has been listening to the episode, and he actually found the emoji for bow tie and put a bow tie emoji and then a heart emoji. And so it may be a ribbon, but it looks like a bow tie, so it just totally counts. but
I'm okay with that.
I didn't know there was a bow tie emoji, so nice work.
I didn't either. That's amazing. That's amazing.
I'm very excited about that. Um, so, we just talked about your bow ties, and that actually ties into forensics. So what makes Shelly tick outside of forensics?
Outside of forensics, I am a huge Lego maniac. Yeah, I'm super excited. I just bought. I had one of my friends in the UK is bootlegging it to Canada for me because I wasn't able to find one in Canada. But the grand piano set that actually plays, I'm very excited about that.
Wow. Wait. So you can build an actual playing piano out of Legos?
Yes, the keys actually move. Yep.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. And those that know me well know that I'm a huge soccer fan. Football, actually, I will call it. Yes, mostly European, English Premier League. I'm a huge Liverpool fan. Go Reds! And so out of work, which is a lot, you will see me watching a lot of football and a lot of and building Lego. But of course, everybody also knows me for the T-shirts that I make. So
that is awesome, and you have so many outside hobbies, and I think that's really, really important for people to realize that it is good for you to have these outside hobbies and that you can still be a successful forensicator, examiner, incident responder with passions outside of forensics. So I love the fact that you do these amazing Lego things. You're going to have to send me pictures sometimes of some of the things you've built, because
yes,
I'd love to see it.
So there's a lot of folks in the DFIR community that are big into Lego. So
yeah, Legos are awesome. So I just think that's really, really cool. Although I would say they're horrible to step on in the middle of the night.
That's fair. I can't leave those out because my puppy would eat them. So.
Oh, you're very, very good. So actually, Camille was just asking about puppy pics. I know that you did post some puppy pics this morning. I really encourage anyone who wants to see some adorable puppy pics to check out Nerdiosity at Nerdiosity on Twitter. Always good for some amazing puppy pics. And you have just your 12-year-old pup.
Oh, my Chihuahua.
Your Chihuahua, just adorable. Like
that's at DFIR Chihuahua.
Mm-hmm. At DFIR
one of the original DFIR animals. Yeah, so he's actually asleep on the floor beside me. And then he has an 8-month-old sister who's an American Staffordshire Bull Terrier and is the terror of his life. So
yeah, I mean, I think a toddler to a grown dog is definitely of interest. Aaron's calling out that you basically got next level Lego building going on, so that's awesome. So, I always like to ask this question because so many people who listen to the show are always interested in breaking into the field. And I really would love to know your advice on what someone can do to get started in digital forensics or incident response.
It's a really good question. I mean, as I said, it tends to be an organic process for a lot of people. It's sort of finding your way to. Although I think there's a lot more programs now that people are coming directly out of school. Certainly, we have a really strong intern program at CrowdStrike where we're hiring directly out of university, and so that is I think changing some of the path a little bit. But first and foremost, I mean, we can teach technical. We can teach you the artifacts. We can teach you how to do analysis, but I think it comes with an innate amount of curiosity. The puzzle solving piece is huge. Wanting to figure out why something is, sort of continuing to dig down that path and having that aha moment and finding that piece is just amazing. So having that innate curiosity, I joke about how many certs I have, but that's simply because I love to keep being better at what I do every day. So sometimes that comes with certs, and sometimes that just comes with good knowledge. But I'm constantly reading, constantly, looking for that next level. I love the fact, I'm going to go back to James again, but James Duffy is doing one of the cool things is he's learning things and then he's sharing it. And I think he referenced this when you were talking to him, but the best way for him to understand things a little bit better is to have to write it down and really teach it. Teaching something is that next level. I think people, my whole family are teachers except for me.
But you are.
I'm getting there. I think we talk about teachers, there's a joke that says that those who can do, those who can't teach. But I think it's actually the opposite of that, which is if you can teach it, you have an innate knowledge of it that people who just do it don't. Because if you can explain it to someone and have them have that aha moment about it. And again, I think that comes with that customer piece as well, right? When I'm talking to customers and they have that, oh yeah, it's a huge piece, and that's an accomplishment, I think. I think, always striving forward for that next piece of knowledge. But getting into the field is really, again, expanding, using the community, getting in there, talking to people. I think there's a lot of, drama and politics in a lot of places right now. I would say that for me, anyways, the DFIR community has always been a place of real comfort, real support.
Absolutely.
Literally being able to reach out to anybody and be able to ask questions and not feel that there was going to be any negativity surrounding that. So I've been very lucky to be part of such an amazing community. And that's grown out of, and hopefully, and I try to give back to that as much as I possibly can as well. But being able to use that community to ask questions and find whether it's an academic program, whether it's an internship, whether it's that next book that you should be reading, and constantly reading and improving. Having base skills, I think you can go back to my path of going from help desk to desktop, did a little application support, and then got into SOC and DFIR. I think it's been a huge bonus to my career anyways, to have started at help desk, because I understand what normal looks like. I also, going back to, those initial troubleshooting skills, being able to ask the right questions, deal with people on a day where they're really frustrated and they need something done right away. And having those initial soft skills, not so soft skills, as well as those technical based skills of knowing what normal looks like, helps me in my practice of looking for what abnormal looks like. One of my favorite things is just, getting into a PCAP and looking for that weird part of a packet that, shouldn't be there, because what normal should look like for that particular packet, for instance. We did at Cisco quite a bit. We would trade PCAPs or what have you back and forth, and try to slip something in that somebody else, to see if somebody was going to find it, a message or what have you, right? So constantly using those kind of things, and there's tons of stuff out on the internet to level up your skill set. So many things.
I love that, because you really did go through so many things here. I think you're really right on this no normal thing. And I know we spoke about it earlier, but it really pushes that narrative to not be scared to take a position that's help desk or SOC or something like that as a stepping stone, or to get some of the foundational skills. It's kind of interesting when you're comparing that to people who are now, instead of coming out of traditionally computer science or engineering or information technology degrees, like when you and I were younger in the field, to now there are specific digital forensics degrees. So I know that might seem at contrast to somebody who has a digital forensics degree, but if you have a digital forensics degree and 2 years experience at the help desk, you now have experience in the field. Like, I think that's countable time, in my opinion. And sometimes people are, and if at that same time you're working on the certs you suggested or studying, I think what you brought up with regards to people sharing what they learn. I'll tell you, I teach and I research, and I will tell you that every night or every week when I'm planning my lesson for the next week for the university, I make sure that I am, trying to think ahead of all of the possible questions and depth of knowledge that I might get about a topic, and it forces me to think deeper. When I have students who have no forensics background, I teach grad school, so I have students who comp sci background and haven't done digital forensics. I have students who have done digital forensics. The ones who ask the hardest questions are the ones who have never done digital forensics. They want a deeper understanding, and it forces you to know things at a more foundational level than sometimes we do as practitioners. So I really love your emphasis there. And then I think the biggest thing that you really hit home on is the connection with people. And those connections with people can help you figure out what to learn. It can help you find partnerships for research. It can help you to find people who will help you with jobs, resumes, like you were talking before, advice for what to expect on interview questions. One of the reasons it's so important to me to ask this question last is this is the most common thing I receive day to day, is people saying, hey, I've just applied for this position. What can I do to prep for the interview? Hey, I'm looking at finally starting to look for a role in digital forensics. What do I need to do? What can I help my resume say that makes sure it gets the right things? Should I apply for this job? And I would say this is the one that drives me the most nuts. I don't know about you, Shelly. People who look at a job posting and go, I'm close, but I don't have everything. Should I apply for it? Apply.
Yes.
If you're asking yourself if you should, please, please, please do. I don't know how Shelly writes job recs, but oftentimes job recs, there isn't going to be somebody who meets everything. Like Shelly was saying, people can learn skills. So if you've got so much base knowledge and you can prove that you can learn that thing, why not, right? Don't be scared.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, when I interview, and I'm doing it a lot more these days, I'm really looking for that passion and that drive. And some of the best answers are, I'm not sure, but this is how I would find out.
Yes.
It's okay to say no in an interview. It's okay to say that you don't know. In fact, it's better to say you don't know than trying to, fudge an answer that you don't know. But if you can tell me how you'd find that answer, I think that is also in and of itself, a great way to go. But
the fudging an answer is funny because, of course, the person asking the question knows the answer. It's the last person you should try to fudge. But on a real engagement, I don't expect you to know everything. I expect you to need to know to go to resources. I expect you may have to look up a port. I expect you may have to go, is this normal, and check. And
yes.
It's knowing how. That's more important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And knowing some of those resources, and we talk about, if I'm going to ask about a specific artifact on an interview, for instance, maybe you're not sure exactly what that artifact does, but tell me where you might go to, if you're going to go to DFIR training and have a look and see, check out the stuff that Devin's done. And where's your resource for that, right? So those are huge things. We don't memorize everything, right?
Absolutely.
We absolutely can't. I'm on customer calls all the time, and they say to me, "What's this, obscure feature of your product that we're using?" And I go, "I'm gonna take that away as a takeaway and ask the product team, because I can't know everything." I think that's a huge piece.
I think that's so important. Like, that's one of the best interview advice I think you can give. I'm going to tell you a story because you reminded me of it, of someone who I hired. And it was because I asked them to tell me, I don't remember the exact question I asked them, but their response, and by the way, I hired this person twice at 2 different organizations. So they were that good. This person is amazing. And the person on that interview, and they were pretty fresh out of school and were working a help desk. So they were actually exactly in that position. And their response was that when they were about 6 years old, they got in trouble because they took apart the VCR and the VCR tape because they wanted to understand how it worked, how the spooling worked, and how it was read. And the person struggled with some of the technical questions, but I hired that person, and I hired them twice because it was all about the mental set. And I've had people who, I've asked for what I thought were pretty simple questions, but they were stressed, and so instead of asking that question, I said, don't worry about the question. Walk me through how you would figure it out. Walk me through your mental process to understand it. And usually that makes them a little bit calmer. And that's what I'm looking for. It's less important that you know the answer. I don't care if you know how many days a certain log is retained. What I want to know is that you know how to think to be able to do the kind of work we do. Think through the process. So just absolutely brilliant.
So true.
So I love it. I love it. I love it. I just think it's such great advice. And I love the fact that so much of what you're saying is about the approach, right? Learn, teach, don't be afraid, and to do that. So thank you so much. Just great advice for anyone looking to get into DFIR from one of the top people who is leading engagements and helping people on their worst day and working with a fantastic team. And
that's true.
Always willing to share and talk. And it's just been, great advice that you gave on our how to handle engagements when in this environment where we're socially distant, in the panel you and I did together a couple months back. And you're just always such full of great knowledge. And it's been just an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest today. So just thank you so much, Shelly. Thank you for all you do and share.
Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic. And thanks for this. I get to be exposed to all these different people every week. And just, again, gain and create a larger community. So this is amazing.
And I'm sure that if anyone wants to reach out to you, they can via Twitter.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And one of the great things is, just like everyone else we've ever had on here, everyone here is willing to be part of your community if you're listening. And if you're listening, you are part of our community.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Shelly. And with that, next week, we're going to have on Mitch Kaiser, who actually was a co-panelist with Shelly when we did that talk about how to handle labs. Mitch Kaiser is on the other side of it. He's a law enforcement investigator in South Bend, so that'll be, as well as an instructor at Notre Dame, so that'll be a fascinating talk. The week after, we have our one and own Jad Saliba speaking with us, and really, really looking forward to, I guess, interviewing my boss. That'll be fun. Followed by Veronica Schmidt as we go global from South Africa, now teaching in Norway, and then on to Shayna Daly from Australia, and then beyond with even other great guests lined up all the way through the end of the year. So we hope to see you on the next episode of Cash Up. Thanks. Bye.